They handed my sister $100,000 and called her the visionary, while my dream was dismissed as nothing more than a childish hobby. At every family table, the spotlight belonged to her, and silence wrapped itself around me like a shadow. Yet even the smallest seed, if nurtured, can grow roots deeper than anyone expects. What happens when the one they doubted most turns quiet persistence into $1 million empire? This isn't just a story about favoritism, it's about resilience, betrayal, and finding the courage to draw a line. If you've ever felt overlooked in your own family, stay with me, because this journey might echo yours. And tell me, what would you do if your parents chose your siblings' dream over yours? You grew up in a world where comparison wasn't just casual, it was constant, like a shadow that followed you everywhere. At the dinner table, when your sister Amanda showed her report card, your parents' voices rose in proud applause. But when you came home with a modest success of your own, the air was filled with silence, or worse, a dismissive laugh. It wasn't that you lacked effort. It was that, in their eyes, effort only mattered if it came from the golden child. And you were never the golden one. By the time you were 12, you already felt the sting of being invisible. While Amanda played piano and earned standing ovations, you stood at a small table in the community market, selling jars of homemade jam. Those jars weren't much just berries you picked by hand, sugar measured carefully, labels scribbled in your handwriting. But they were yours. Neighbors stopped by, smiled, and left with every jar you had. You came home with $20 in your pocket, and a sense of pride so bright it carried you for days. Yet when you showed your mother, she sighed, shaking her head, telling you not to waste your time on childish hobbies. Your father nodded quietly, as if your joy was an inconvenience. Amanda, meanwhile, was rewarded for everything. When she joined the debate team, she didn't just get recognition. She got adoration. Your parents spoke of her as if she were destined for greatness, while your name barely entered their conversations. When she whispered dreams of a fashion career, they leaned in with eager eyes. But when you suggested opening a small organic shop, their faces hardened. "That's not realistic," close quote, your father said. And you understood. In this house, only Amanda's dreams had weight. Still, you carried your small victories. Your grandmother Hazel, with her weathered hands and kind eyes, was the one who noticed. She would slip you a folded $10 bill after tasting your jam, whispering that you had something special. In her words, you felt seen. And that spark, though fragile, stayed lit through every lecture, every rolled eye, every smirk Amanda gave when she knew she had the upper hand. College came, and the divide deepened. Amanda's education was fully funded at a private school in Boston. Tuition, dorms, expenses all handled. You, on the other hand, pieced your way through a state university, working night shifts at a diner, saving tips just to buy your textbooks. While she called home with stories of city life and new projects, you stirred jam in your tiny dorm kitchen, scribbling ideas and notebooks no one would ever read. You didn't have the resources, but you had determination. When Amanda came back for the holidays, your parents paraded her around like a trophy. "She's going places," close quote, your father boasted, his pride swelling in every word. You sat quietly, your ideas tucked away, waiting for a moment when your voice could be heard. But that moment never came. At least, not then. You finish your degree in environmental science, not with the luxury of celebration, but with relief that you'd managed it alone. Your parents barely noticed, their attention still fixed on Amanda's next move. But you noticed something else. The world outside your family valued things they ignored. Working at a local organic market, you listened to customers talk about how much they wanted fresh local food, but couldn't find the time to shop for it. They wanted health, but also convenience. That gap in their lives lit a thought in yours. What if you could bring organic produce to people's doors? The idea grew quietly, like roots beneath the soil. You called it organic harmony. It wasn't just about food, it was about connection, trust, something real in a world where you had always been dismissed. With numbers scribbled in a notebook, you worked out what it would take. A van, a website, partnerships with local farmers. $10,000 could make it possible. For a moment, you let yourself imagine asking your parents for help, not because you believed they would say yes, but because some part of you still hoped they might. At a small diner, you laid it all out for them. You showed them the demand, the potential, the farmers who were ready to work with you. Your hands trembled as you spoke, but your heart beat with belief. And when you looked up, waiting for even a spark of encouragement, your father shook his head. "It's too risky," close quote, he said flatly. Your mother added, "Your sister has the business sense. You should focus on finding a real job." Their words felt like stones in your chest. You had dared to hope, and hope was denied. But the wound was deeper than rejection, it was the knowledge that they had never believed in you, not once. And yet, only weeks later, you overheard them gushing at dinner about Amanda's new idea. A luxury fashion brand. Pop-up boutiques. Big dreams. They didn't just support her. They promised her $100,000 to make it real. That night, you lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing their voices echoing in your mind. 100,000 for her, but not 10,000 for you. And for the first time, anger burned hotter than despair. Maybe you didn't have their support, but you still had something. Your own fire. Hazel saw it in you. One evening, as you helped her in the garden, she pressed an envelope into your palm. For your business, close quote, she whispered. Inside was a check for $1,000, her savings from selling quilts. It wasn't much compared to what Amanda had been given, but it was everything, because it was a gift of faith. With that, you decided you didn't need their approval. You would build organic harmony anyway, piece by piece, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. And so you worked. Long hours at the market, extra shifts at a coffee shop, nights spent hunched over spreadsheets and routes. You cut expenses until there was nothing left to cut. You lived in a bare apartment with only a mattress and a table, pouring every dollar into your vision. Your body was tired, but your spirit was alive. Every time doubt crept in, you remembered Hazel's voice. You've got grit. That's worth more than their praise. If you're listening now, maybe you've felt the same weight, that crushing sense of being overlooked, of watching someone else praised while you stood in silence. And maybe you've also felt that spark, the one that says, I can still rise. If this story resonates with you, let it be a reminder. Your worth is not defined by who claps for you, but by what you build when no one is watching. If these words touch something in you, consider staying with us. A gentle like, a quiet subscribe is a way of walking this journey together, of telling stories that might mirror your own. After all, who knows? The next story could be yours. And let me ask you this. If your family dismissed your dream but handed everything to someone else, would you keep chasing your vision, or would you let it fade into silence? You thought the rejection at that diner was the lowest point, but life was not finished testing you. It was Thanksgiving when the divide between you and your family became undeniable. The house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon pies, laughter filling the air as relatives gathered around the long table. You had brought your friend Tiffany, someone who worked at a rival market, but had often listened when you spoke about your idea for organic harmony. You trusted her, perhaps too much. When the clinking of glasses signaled attention, it was Amanda who rose to her feet. With the glow of confidence only a favored child can wear, she announced her grand venture, Luxe Threads. A luxury fashion brand, she explained, complete with curated collections, exclusive pop-up shops, and even a delivery component for premium clients. Her words hit you like a thunderclap. That delivery idea was yours. You had shared it with her over coffee, laying out how organic harmony could bring farm-fresh produce directly to families who had no time to shop. She had listened, taken notes even, nodding as though she cared. And now, here she was, presenting it as her own, with kale replaced by silk, fruit boxes replaced by designer dresses. Your parents were radiant, their applause echoing louder than the clinking cutlery. She's the future of this family, close quote, your father declared, raising his glass. Your mother's eyes shone with pride, calling Amanda the visionary they had always believed her to be. You sat frozen, fork suspended halfway to your mouth, as if the room itself had gone silent, except for the thundering of your heart. Tiffany leaned forward, praising Amanda's brilliance, and you felt the ground shift beneath you. If even your friend could betray your trust, who was left to stand by your side? You forced a smile, pretending to be happy, but inside you were breaking. Your grandmother Hazel noticed. Quietly, she slipped an envelope into your hand later that evening, whispering, for your business. When you opened it in solitude, you found a check for $1,000, her savings from years of quilting. It wasn't much compared to the fortune your parents had just poured into Amanda, but it carried something Amanda's 100,000 never could. Faith. That faith became the seed you watered every single day. At the organic market, you worked alongside Michael Turner, a colleague with a sharp mind for logistics. When you shared your dream with him, he didn't laugh. He leaned in, eyes alive with curiosity, and said simply, let's make it happen. In that moment, you realized what true support felt like. Together, you mapped delivery routes, spoke with farmers, and built a humble website with borrowed equipment and long nights. Your first chance came through Linda Brooks, a store owner downtown who ran a health shop. Skeptical at first, she agreed to a trial. You and Michael packed the first boxes with care, carrots bright as fire, apples polished to a shine, spinach fresh from the soil. You borrowed a van, delivered them yourselves, and prayed the customers would return. A week later, Linda called, her voice carrying excitement. They can't get enough of it, close quote, she said. And just like that, organic harmony was real. Meanwhile, Amanda's Luxe Threads was making waves in the city. Glittering launch parties, influencers snapping photos, champagne glasses raised high, it was everything you had never been invited to. Tiffany sent you pictures, her texts dripping with admiration for your sister. You didn't respond. You poured your energy into your work, every century invested, every hour devoted to building something steady. Where Amanda's lights sparkled briefly, your foundation grew strong and quiet. But whispers soon began to surface. Vendors complained of late payments from Lux Threads. Customers murmured about deliveries gone wrong, scarves arriving weeks late, or garments torn. You overheard fragments in the marketplace. Amanda burning through cash, struggling to keep up appearances. And though part of you felt a sting of satisfaction, you quickly pushed it aside. Gloating would not build your dream. Only perseverance could. You lived lean, sacrificing comfort to keep organic harmony alive. Your apartment was little more than 4 walls and a mattress, but your heart was full each time a new family signed up. Every email praising the freshness of your boxes felt like proof that you were right to keep going. When Linda doubled her orders, you and Michael celebrated with high fives, though even in celebration you thought ahead to the next step. Then came the call that changed everything. A regional supermarket chain, Greenfields, wanted you to supply 10 of their stores. When you signed the contract in a cramped office with a second-hand desk, your hands trembled not with fear but with joy. You had built something out of nothing, out of $1,000 and sheer determination. Yet success drew envy like honey draws bees. Suddenly, online reviews appeared, filled with venom. Complaints of molded produce, overpriced boxes, poor service. You knew they weren't real. The names didn't match your customer lists. Their words didn't match the feedback you had heard in person. Soon, whispers reached you. Amanda had been speaking ill of your business, spreading rumors that you faked your sourcing. Tiffany, once your confidant, echoed her lies, telling others your boxes were subpar. It hurt. It cut deeper than any rejection before. But instead of collapsing, you fought with honesty. You filmed a video tour of your warehouse, showing crisp greens, crates packed by hand, smiling farmers who trusted you. You listed every supplier and their certifications. Customers rallied, praising your transparency. Greenfields doubled their order, and Linda's customers spread your video proudly. The lies backfired, casting shadows on Amanda's failing business instead of your rising one. By the time Easter arrived, Organic Harmony had expanded into 20 supermarkets across North Carolina. You invited your family to your office for dinner, hoping perhaps to share your success peacefully. But your parents walked in not with congratulations but with expectation. They called your company a family achievement, insisted it was only fair they received a share. Amanda added, her voice syrupy but sharp. It's amazing how far we've come. In that moment, you realized they hadn't changed. They hadn't believed in you, hadn't invested a cent, and now, seeing your success, they wanted ownership. You stood tall, your voice steady, telling them no. The office you built from nothing was yours, not theirs. Amanda's accusations of jealousy rang hollow, her eyes betraying bitterness. Hazel's firm words cut through the tension. She owes you nothing. You gave her nothing but doubt. For the first time, you saw clearly. You did not need their approval, nor their validation. You had already built more than they had ever imagined for you. That night, you typed a single word in the family group chat. Bye. And with it, you closed the door on years of dismissal and doubt. As you look back now, you know your story is not just about one family, but about anyone who has ever been told they are not enough. And if you're listening, perhaps you've carried that same, and your parents, once so proud, were now burdened by the cost of her failure. They had sold their vacation cabin, downsized their home, and yet the debts lingered like shadows they couldn't shake. You didn't gloat, though the temptation was there. Instead, you focused on building. Michael suggested hiring a team, and soon new voices filled the office, young people eager to learn, each of them believing in the mission. One of them, a college student named Ethan, reminded you of yourself. He came with an idea about sustainable packaging, shy but determined, and you saw in his eyes the same hunger you had carried for so long. You handed him a check from the community fund you had started, telling him to pay it forward. His smile lit up the room, and in it, you saw a circle closing. You had become the one offering faith when no one else would. Still, late at night, when the warehouse was dark and the roads outside were quiet, memories crept back. You thought of that Thanksgiving table, of Tiffany leaning in to praise Amanda, of your mother's voice calling your sister the true visionary. The sting hadn't fully faded. Even with success surrounding you, the wound of being overlooked left a scar. And sometimes, scars ache even when the body is whole. One evening, Hazel invited you for tea. Her garden was in full bloom, jasmine filling the air, and she listened as you spoke about expansion, new contracts, new challenges. She smiled softly, sipping from her cup. "You've built something honest," close quote, she said. "Don't let the past steal the joy of it." Her words sank deep. You realized then that your journey wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about proving yourself right. Yet, even as you found clarity, the past sought ways to intrude. Amanda reached out once, her message terse but pleading. She spoke of how life had treated her unfairly, how suppliers had abandoned her, how people turned their backs when she needed them most. She hinted at starting over, perhaps with your help. For a long moment, you stared at her words, the irony almost unbearable. She had once taken your idea, twisted it, and left you with betrayal. Now she asked for your hand to lift her. You didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because you finally understood something vital. You were not responsible for saving her from choices she had made. Each decision had been hers, and each consequence belonged to her. Letting her carry them was not revenge, it was justice. Your parents tried too. They left voicemails, sharp at first, then softer, filled with appeals about family and unity. "We're still your mother and father," close quote, your mother said once, her voice trembling. "You owe us." That word "owe" struck deep. For years, you had been told you owed them obedience, silence, gratitude, even when none of it was returned. But now you saw it clearly. You owed them nothing. Your life was not a debt to be repaid. And so, you continued forward. Organic Harmony expanded into 5 states, then 7. The community fund grew, supporting young entrepreneurs who reminded you of your own beginning. Each story you touched was like a stone cast into water, ripples spreading far beyond what you could see. Families gathered around tables with your produce at the center, their children eating meals made possible by your persistence. And in those quiet moments, you felt something Amanda had never known. Fulfillment. But fulfillment did not erase questions. Sometimes you wondered what might have been if your parents had believed in you from the start. Would the journey have felt easier, or would the struggle have still been necessary to forge the fire within you? Would you have grown this strong without the weight of dismissal pressing against your shoulders? These questions lingered like echoes, unanswerable yet powerful. One night, as you scrolled through old notebooks, you found the first sketches of Organic Harmony, scribbled lines, clumsy numbers, a dream barely formed. You held the paper in your hands, fragile and worn, and tears welled in your eyes. Not tears of pain, but of pride. You had taken those sketches, ignored by everyone, and built them into a living reality. And perhaps that was the greatest triumph of all, not the millions in contracts, not the warehouses or delivery vans, but the proof that your dream had been worth something all along. Your journey had become larger than yourself. Reporters began to call, asking about your rise, your story. Some wanted to focus on the betrayal, the family rift, the drama. But you always redirected them to the mission. Fresh, organic food for families, trust between farmers and consumers, sustainability for the future. You didn't need the world to know about the wounds that had shaped you. You only needed them to see the vision that had carried you beyond them. And yet, sometimes, when you saw Amanda's name in passing or heard whispers of your parents struggling, a pang still struck. Not pity, not longing, but something complicated, like a shadow of the love you had once hoped for. Family ties, even when severed, leave traces. You had cut the rope, but the imprint on your skin remained. Sitting in your office late one evening, the glow of the city beyond the window, you asked yourself a quiet question. Was it worth it? Was the pain of being dismissed, the loneliness of building alone, worth the triumph that came after? Deep down, you knew the answer. Without the struggle, the triumph would mean less. Without the doubt, belief would hold no weight. You had been shaped by what you endured, and though it left scars, it also gave you strength. Perhaps that is the truth of many lives, that pain and perseverance walk together, that betrayal teaches resilience, and that the absence of support makes the presence of success all the more powerful. And maybe, just maybe, the ones who are overlooked are the very ones destined to rise the highest. So I ask you now, not as part of this story, but as someone who has carried its weight. Have you ever felt invisible, only to discover later that invisibility gave you the space to grow your own light? Success brought you into spaces you had once only imagined. Conferences invited you to speak, not about family betrayals or favoritism, but about building resilience, about how a seed of an idea could grow into something transformative. You stood on stages, lights blinding, voices hushed, and told the truth, not the details of every wound, but the deeper lesson. That dreams are worth pursuing even when no one believes in them. Each time you spoke, someone in the audience would nod, eyes shining, and you knew your story was not just your own. It belonged to every person who had been told they were not enough. Meanwhile, your company blossomed. Warehouses expanded into neighboring states, and trucks carrying your logo became a familiar sight on highways. Families sent thank you notes with photos of children biting into crisp apples, letters that reminded you of why you had begun this journey. For every jar of jam you once sold for a few dollars, now there were thousands of boxes reaching households across the region. And yet, amid all the growth, you remained anchored to the memory of where it began. A little market stall, a grandmother's faith, and a heart that refused to give up. Your parents, though, lived another story. The fortune they had poured into Amanda's dreams had vanished. Their friends, once impressed by the glitter of luxury boutiques, now whispered about debts and disappointment. The pride that had once shone in their voices when they spoke of Amanda was replaced with silence. Neighbors who had applauded them now avoided eye contact. And Amanda herself. Her name surfaced occasionally, attached to more unpaid bills or fleeting attempts at reinvention that never lasted. There was a time when you might have felt satisfaction in their downfall, a vindication for every slight you endured. But now, watching from a distance, you felt something else. Detachment. Their struggles were no longer your burden. You had carried their doubt for years. You would not carry their failure now. You learned to let go not with bitterness, but with clarity. Hazel remained by your side, her presence a reminder that not all family wounds cut the same. She continued to be your anchor, sharing her quiet wisdom over tea in the garden. "Family isn't about who claims you when you succeed," close quote, she said once, her voice steady. "It's about who believes in you when no one else does." Those words stayed with you, echoing every time you considered what family really meant. Blood ties might define a beginning, but chosen faith defined a future. As the years passed, you realized that your journey had become something larger than survival. It was about legacy. The community fund grew, supporting young entrepreneurs who reminded you of yourself at the start, nervous, overlooked, but determined. You watched their faces light up when someone finally said, "I believe in you." In their triumphs, you saw your own beginnings reflected back, and it felt like redemption. Still, the shadows of the past lingered. Sometimes, late at night, you would dream of that family table, of your mother's voice praising Amanda, of your father's silence, of Tiffany's betrayal. Dreams blurred with memories, and you would wake with your heart pounding. Success had healed much, but scars had their own way of speaking. And you understood something profound. Scars do not mean weakness. They mean survival. One afternoon, a journalist asked you a question you had avoided for years. "Do you think your parents regret it?" Close quote. For a long time, you sat silent, weighing the answer. Finally, you said, "Regret is theirs to carry, not mine." And that was the truth. Whether they regretted or not did not change your path. Their choices had shaped your beginning, but not your ending. The ending, you realized, was yours to write. And you were writing it with every decision, every boundary, every new chapter of growth. The warehouse filled with boxes ready to be shipped was not just commerce, it was testimony. The children biting into apples, the farmers with steady work, the young entrepreneurs given a chance, each of them was a line in the story of your life. And in that story, you were no longer the invisible child. You were the author. But with authorship came questions you carried deep in your chest. If your family had supported you from the beginning, would you have built the same fire within? If Amanda had never been given everything, would you have worked so tirelessly? If Hazel had not whispered her faith into your ear, would you have found the strength to go on? These questions lingered, unanswerable but vital. They reminded you that life's contradictions, pain and joy, betrayal and trust, dismissal and triumph often exist side by side, shaping us in ways we never expect. In quiet moments, you thought of Amanda. You wondered if she lay awake at night, thinking of the choices she made. Did she understand that envy had destroyed her, that taking what wasn't hers had left her with nothing? Did she ever wish she had stood beside you instead of against you? And then you wondered something more personal. If she walked through your door tomorrow, not with excuses but with an apology, would you be able to forgive? The question lingered like a stone in your heart. Forgiveness was not about erasing the past, it was about releasing yourself from its grip. But could you forgive someone who had never once admitted their fault? Could you forgive parents who still spoke of entitlement, not remorse? Only you could decide, and perhaps that decision would come not with words, but with time. Until then, you pressed forward. The road ahead stretched long, filled with both promise and challenge. You knew setbacks would come, as they always do. But you also knew you had faced worse and risen. That knowledge was a shield, a reminder that the overlooked child had become unshakable. And so, standing at the threshold of yet another chapter, you asked yourself quietly, what defines a person more, the love they receive, or the love they choose to give despite the absence of it? In the quiet that follows every storm, you found your peace not in their approval, but in your own truth.